It recently occurred to us that IGN's only been around for 30 years. Movies, on the other hand, have been around for a lot longer than that, and so many of them have never been reviewed by IGN. So, in the interest of remedying that, frankly, horrific oversight, here comes our first Flashback review. We're starting with Wes Craven's genre-revitalizing, franchise-spawning meta-teen slasher, Scream. Scream was released in 1996, making it 30 years old, the age over which we're supposed to stop trusting people. As one of the most influential horror films of all time, with more ink spilled online about it than blood spilled on screen, it's a strange thing for the movie to not have an official score here at IGN. As an exercise, it's just as strange to go back and review a film with the kind of legacy Scream enjoys today. So, for at least this first part, I'm just going to pretend that it's 1996.
I'm feeling woozy here!
Bill Clinton just won the election for his second term in office, Toni Braxton's Unbreak My Heart is at the top of the charts, and Wes Craven kinda needs a win. He's coming off of Vampire in Brooklyn, which was, and frankly always will be, considered a big old flop. New Nightmare was for that, and showed Craven's willingness to break the fourth wall, or, at minimum, an understanding that it needed to be broken. That contemporary reviews of that film largely considered it a self-reflective breath of fresh air in a tired franchise is telling. By and large, in the mid-90s, the bloom was to some degree off the horror movie rose. So, here comes Scream.
Hello?
A meta-commentary on the entire genre. It's doing all the things we loved about slasher movies in the 70s and 80s, and also making fun of them.
This is standard horror movie stuff.
But also, it's made by the guy that made a lot of those tropes famous in the first place, with films like Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, and, most iconically, A Nightmare on Elm Street. All of this adds up to Scream having its cake and eating it too, and it all starts with 13 of the best opening minutes a horror fan could ask for.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
There's an argument to be made to put the opening sequence of Scream up there with the best in film history, not just horror.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
It would have been a legendary short film if there hadn't been a whole movie attached to the back of it. It all at once played the hits, preying on youthful fears of being home alone and getting a call from a stranger, and modernized the discourse, quizzing Drew Barrymore's panicked Casey Becker with a gotcha question about Jason Voorhees' mom.
That's the wrong answer.
The camera work is brilliant as well, floating around the house, subtly tilted and stalking Casey with a slow, controlled Steadicam. It pushes into a close-up to punctuate the more frightened beats of her performance, instead of always cutting to those close-ups. The edit is just as deliberate, patiently waiting for the right moment to attack, exactly like the actual killer is doing outside. Barrymore plays her fear with a bit of disbelief, her panic with a little bit of anger, while Roger L. Jackson, as the voice on the phone, shifts gears from playful and sexy into deranged and dangerous as he toys with her.
You hang up on me again, I'll gut you like a fish, understand?
And then, she dies. After being front and center in the marketing, that Drew Barrymore doesn't make it out of the first scene is wild, but it's just part of Craven and writer Kevin Williamson's scheme. This opening creates a world that both loves the same movies we do, while deftly crafting a thrilling environment where anybody could be killed next. Being denied one of the most recognizable faces from the poster for the subsequent runtime, the rest of the film is carried by an ensemble. TV stars Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox head up a group of young actors with plenty to prove on the big screen, but David Arquette's Deputy Dewey might be the key to the whole thing. While most of the cast capably play their roles as best friend or red herring or geeky off-to-the-side guy, Dewey is a meek older brother in over his head as a police officer, trying desperately to be taken seriously. You could even say he's trying to play against type.
When I wear this badge, you treat me like a man of the law.
In a movie where subversion of expectations is the whole point, Arquette's fledgling lawman embodies that theme better than anybody else on screen.
You're not scared, are you?
He also speaks to the true and lasting brilliance of this movie, if I can flash forward back to the present day. The balance of comedy, horror, and self-awareness created by Craven and Williamson is Scream's real gift to cinema. It gave us a film that's a blast to watch, yes, but that formula hides all manner of sins in a way that keeps the movie from feeling dated. Cordless landline phones and Blockbuster video are quintessentially 90s, but they don't make the movie any less relevant 30 years later. Now, had the filmmakers not doused Scream with a self-referential bucket of meta corn syrup,
Same stuff they use for pig's blood in Carrie.
the movie would have fallen into the same traps that had the genre gasping for its last breaths in the mid-90s and been more dated than any number of VHS tapes or Tori Spelling references could manage.
I see you as a young Meg Ryan myself.
Thanks, Dewey, with my luck, I'd guess Tori Spelling.
There are also dangling logic threads to pull on, like how did one of the two killers sneak into the principal's office to murder Henry Winkler? He would have had to have been behind that door for like an hour when we just saw both Billy and Stu in the hallway a few seconds ago. Ditto for Ghostface suddenly appearing in a garage that we've seen every corner of. And how is it that at least one of them is not covered in beer for the rest of the night after being hit in the face and crotch with full bottles at glass-shattering force? And why is that garage door so goddamn powerful? What brand is that? My goodness. But most of these questions only arise in repeat viewings. It isn't until you know the ending and watch it again that you might even ask things like that. Nor would you even bother with those questions if you're charmed by the rest of the film. Ghostface is behind that door because it's an effective jump scare for us, the audience, not because it makes any sort of logical sense in the space and time of Woodsboro. But thanks to the simple fact that these tropes are spelled out and on the nose, Scream gets away with it because that's precisely the thing it's making fun of.
No, please don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface. I want to be in the sequel.
Perhaps the most obvious beneficiary of this is Skeet Ulrich's Billy. As one half of the movie's central romantic pair, we meet him as he sneaks into Sydney's room to guilt her into having sex. He holds it against her throughout the film, gaslighting her in moments of real distress and ultimately manipulating her into sleeping with him by the end. The guy's a dirtbag, and with 30 years and who knows how many repeat viewings later, it's a damn good thing he turned out to be the killer.
He's gone mad.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
No, Billy!
But the tone of Scream, the meta-awareness created by Craven and Williamson, is responsible for smoothing that part of the story over to the point that we still talk so lovingly about this film. The entire plot of the movie would ultimately be pretty forgettable if Scream didn't have, yeah, that's what we're making fun of, to fall back on.
Not in my movie.
In fact, the whodunit aspect of the film is probably its weakest element. The red herrings get presented and tossed away right on schedule. Characters get killed off in a predictable order, Drew Barrymore's early exit notwithstanding. And all the tropes that ought to be in a thriller are dutifully present.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie.
Ultimately, one could argue that's a feature, not a bug, and probably be right, considering the way each of these tropes is undermined. However, the story of Sydney's mom and infidelity and the anger a high school boy feels about it, and if you don't remember what I'm talking about here, that's exactly my point,
Is that motive enough for you?
is very much not what's so iconic about this movie. And that's the idea behind doing these flashback reviews as well. How was the movie received in its original context, and how much has time changed its perception? In Scream's case, with 6 sequels and 3 seasons of a TV show out there still slashing, the Scream clones of the late 90s hot teen slasher spree, and an entire franchise built around the film's spoof, it's hard to understate the impact this movie has had on the zeitgeist.
Do you know what that could do for my book sales?
Where meta slashers are concerned, they did it first and they did it best. Craven and Williamson may well have pulled the ladder up behind them after Scream. Scream's place in not just horror movie history, but pop culture in general is undeniable, so it's getting an 8. It came out swinging with maybe the best 13 minutes worth of cold open terror the inside of a movie theater has ever seen, then stuck around for another jump scare filled hour and a half. While playing with the tropes he made famous, Wes Craven crafted a lighter, more self-reflective tone for Kevin Williamson's script to shine a light on everything we love, and everything we think is kind of silly, about slasher movies. While some moments play the hits without the added commentary and feel like they belong in one of the more tired entries in the genre that Scream ultimately revitalized, 3 decades of Scream and countless clone spoofs and wannabes later, it's clear why this film changed the landscape for scary movies. Well, there you go. That was my review of the original Scream from 1996. At long last, it's got a number in a hexagon. I, for one, will be sleeping better tonight. And joining me to chat about a little bit more, the Dewey to Miguel, fellow head of entertainment reviews here at IGN, Scott Collura. Scott, how's it going, man?
Oh, it's going great. I'm in a big time Scream mindset right now because as you're reviewing Scream 1, I've been doing a rewatch of the entire series. So like Dewey, Gale, Roman Bridger, I don't know who I am at this point.
You can be all of it if you want. It's fine with me. It's 30 years old, man. Like looking back at this movie and the fact that 30 years later we're still making movies, because there were good movies, other very good movies made in 1996 that we're not still making more of here in 2026. So like what was it about Scream for you that worked so well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the thing everyone talks about, right? Which is the meta aspect of it. The fact that it was self-aware enough to have fun with the idea of the slasher movie while also still being a slasher movie, right? They're smart enough to say like, yeah, our audience knows what we're up to here.
I you're going to see it for the first time in the theaters. So like I wasn't much of a horror fan at the time, but I became one because of this movie, because it's sort of like, there's this great energy of like, come on in to this joke.
Yeah.
Like we're all here, water's fine. Like it's a strangely very welcoming entry level horror movie in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's a great point actually. And like, again, watching the sequels, I feel like a lot of them feel the same way. It's always like, here's this great group of kids who you may or may not have seen on a WB or CW show, or, and like, they're going to be your family for the next hour and 55 minutes. And yes, most of them aren't going to make it through, but it's going to be fun.
I do think that this is one of those franchises that doubled down on the right things. Like looking back at Scream, the original, and like seeing what it did right, franchises can turn into The Matrix or Pirates of the Caribbean real fast if they double down on the wrong things. But all of these sequels, like however you feel about them, whatever mileage you get out of the sequels, if you love them or couldn't care less about them or never saw them in the first place, like they carry the torch for this original movie. Like the thing that this original movie did right, they all continue to do it right.
But yes, when it works, they're addressing what the audience is thinking about in terms of the movie landscape, and not even just the horror landscape. Like when you get to the more modern ones, like Scream 5, which was called Scream when it was released. That one, they talk about the legacy sequel, the requel, and like they're openly talk. They imply that Rian Johnson, I think, directed, so like the director of The Last Jedi, and like they're talking about the legacy characters, and like they point to Dewey. They literally point to Dewey when they're talking about the legacy characters.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is like at some point you run out of room, right? You do such a good job with Scream, making fun of the thing that you're doing while you're still actively doing it. And then, because that was the only issue that I think doesn't hold up with the original Scream, and I talked about this in the review, is like there are some moments that are just those tropes.
Right.
There's just those tropes without the added flavor of the meta thing that they're doing, and those are the scenes where I'm like, oh yeah, I don't need that.
Yeah.
And I think as the sequels go on, you start to run out of them because the Scream was so influential that so many movies became like Scream, or that were given permission to sort of play with the tropes and be able to break the fourth wall just subtly, that like that became the norm. And then once that becomes the norm, what do you as Scream do to continue pushing that sort of boundary? And at some point you just run out of room, and you sort of become the thing that you're making fun of. It's a lot like watching a really cool car chase and then watching Bullet and being like, yeah, that car chase was fine. It's like, no, but Bullet did it first.
Yes,
like,
Bullet was the car chase, yes.
Yeah, at some point, Scream just becomes a regular movie, I guess.
I think also, it's interesting in terms of the slasher genre that, like, most of the principal characters have stayed alive this long, too. That doesn't usually happen, right? Like, even Jamie Lee Curtis was killed off in one of the versions of the Halloween series eventually. And then they were like, yeah, well, you know what? Now we're doing a hard reboot.
Let's pretend like those 4 other ones didn't count.
I'm starting to regret coming here.
The other thing that's interesting about Scream and its place is that Wes Craven did exactly the same thing just 2 years earlier. Because Wes Craven's New Nightmare was effectively Scream.
Yeah.
But just specifically for Freddy Krueger, which is weird, sort of the opposite Bullet, because it did it first,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
New Nightmare was first, but Scream took sort of a much broader aim
Yeah.
than New Nightmare. So New Nightmare, if you were done with Freddy Krueger, then didn't matter, you know. Scream being able to look at the entire genre like that, it's really an interesting apples to apples comparison from the same filmmaker in the same era doing the same thing.
Yeah, and for those who don't remember, New Nightmare is it was the last of the original Freddy movies, not including Freddy versus Jason, I believe. But it's the one where Heather Langenkamp, who played the lead girl in the first Nightmare movie, plays herself. So it's supposed to be that Freddy is breaking into the real world. So Wes Craven plays himself. John Saxon comes back, who played her dad. He plays himself.
Robert Englund gets to play himself and Freddy again. Like it's all. I guess the premise is he's a real demonic spirit that has been trapped by a good script. Yeah, effectively is what Wes Craven's got this great monologue about how, like, I mean, you know, if the stories get stale, then that's when they escape. Yeah. You know, which even at that point, he's talking about the business in the same way that Scream does. You know, in the same way that there are rules to this.
Yeah. And he's talking about the sequels that I don't think he loved the sequels to his movie that much either, you know, so I think that's part of it. But I think what New Nightmare is missing certainly is the flair and the humor of what Kevin Williamson's script brought to Scream, right? Like, again, the Scream is so fun despite being a horror movie, and New Nightmare is like, I think on this rewatch, I like New Nightmare a bit more than you did, but it has a couple of creepy moments, but it is largely a slog. Scream is not at all that. I mean, Scream really feels so...
No, it sprints.
Yeah, you know. So.
Well, and to your point about it being, like, it was written by Kevin Williamson, who is a fan.
Right.
So to some degree, Wes Craven writing that, like, he writes a thing specifically about a thing he wrote. Like, there's an energy to it that just doesn't quite translate to me, the viewer, right? But Kevin Williamson is a fan of this genre. He's writing the thing he wants to see. He's writing all of these things that he feels about the genre, and then translating that into Scream. Like, there's an energy there that just was completely missing out of New Nightmare. Yeah. And I think having that sort of third-party perspective, I guess, on it might have been the thing that made the big difference.
Yeah. You know, and that kind of leads us to something else that you and I were talking about off camera. But these horror directors, they must feel pigeonholed at a certain point by genre stuff, right? Like, when you're making a horror movie, usually you're restricted on budget. Like, you're not given all the money in the world, right? You're not Chris Nolan just because of your success, and right. Scream, I'm sure, was very creatively liberating for Wes Craven, right? To be able to break out of some of the conventions and succeed at what he tried to do with New Nightmare. But, like, you got to wonder, is this why John Carpenter's been retired for all these years, right? Like, did he just kind of...
He's like, hell with it, I'm going to go play video games. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if that had plenty to do with it.
Yeah, I feel like they might feel like they've run their course at a certain point on genre stuff, and then they're trapped. And so good for Wes Craven that he was able to find this new facet to things, if that's in fact what happened with him, you know. So,
I mean, I really think they kind of pulled the ladder up after him. Like, Scream did it, and I don't know that anybody's done it since quite the same or quite right, and frankly, like, they shouldn't be. And it seems like everybody is aware that they was like, well, you did it, so we can't do that. So nobody's doing it. So it's just Scream, you know?
Don't you know the rules? What rules? You don't... Jesus Christ, you don't know the rules?
All right, well, I think that's it. I think we did it. That's going to do it for us. Thanks for watching our very first Flashback review. Come back next time. We're going to be talking to, I don't know, we're going to talk about Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah.
Should we say that on camera and hold ourselves to it? We're going to talk about Bride of Frankenstein next time. And for more old movie stuff, check us out over on Cinefix. And for more Scream and Screams 2 through 7, be sure to subscribe to IGN wherever you like to watch.